welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and today on the co-host chair is Matt. Welcome back, Matt, in your first 2022 debut.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm actually in the co-host bed tonight.
You feeling all right?
I just got off of work, so my feet need to be up a little bit.
Well, that's the nice thing about podcasting is you can literally, as long as your mouth is going and you're in a mic somewhere is catching it, then that's all I need. If this is your very first episode, the way we format the show, the bulk of the episode is news ranging from all the things that I had mentioned earlier. We do have a lot of movie news this week. And this month for this week, we are covering what's new on HBO Max. So the February 2022 highlights. And finally, we'll end it with the Brokehead Block, the more personal side of the podcast. It's basically what Matt and I have been doing, reading, playing, watching since you last were on the show or since you last heard us. So with all of that out of the way, let's jump right in and explore sector number 494. Kicking things off with a bit of video game news, as according to Gaming Industry Insider and Leaker, their name is Leaky Pandy, the next Mario Kart game will have more than just Mario characters. Leaky Pandy said the following series will be represented, so that includes Advance Wars, Animal Crossing, ARMS, Balloon Fight, F-Zero, Kid Icarus, Splatoon, The Legend of Zelda. There will also be non-IP that are represented, but it will only be limited to the Rabbids from Ubisoft. And with this leak, it was also rumored that Mario Kart 9 is going to be revealed at a Nintendo Direct sometime this month. Maybe by the time this episode releases, we'll already know whether this was true or not. We did get Legend of Zelda characters and vehicles in the last Mario Kart, so this doesn't seem to be too out of place. Do you think that we're going to get like a Smash Brothers version of Mario Kart with the next one?
That would be awesome. Mario Kart's always like a good party game, to have people playing around, and but it's always kind of like those same series of characters. So it'd be cool to get some fresh looks in there, and everyone wants to mash things up now, so it'd be cool to see Kid Icarus and Zelda, those F-Zero vehicles. So like it'd be cool to kind of smash it up a little bit.
The F-Zero ones especially were awesome for me because if you see the vehicles in that game and then you put them into Mario Kart, man, that would be awesome. And I know part of my gaming brain would be like, F-Zero vehicles are way faster than all these Mario Kart ones.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't complain, honestly. I think it would be neat. Even if they just have the vehicle in there, if they don't have the characters, fine. But if they have like a mod or a skin of one of the existing ones where you can have some of these F-Zero cars, that on itself would be awesome. Are there any Nintendo characters, non-Mario, that you think you would want to play as or that you think would fit pretty well in a Mario Kart game?
Samus.
Yes.
Or Star Fox.
That was mine, is get Fox McCloud in there, get a little R-Wing on wheels, or even if it hovers, that would be amazing. If they don't put Fox in here, I won't be happy, but I also wouldn't be surprised because the last Star Fox game, Star Fox Zero, did not do great. They tried to implement that motion control stuff in there because of Shigeru Miyamoto, and I think the franchise is pretty much dead for the years to come until someone else comes up with a really good pitch to try to revive the series.
They keep trying. It's kind of like the Tron movie series. Like Tron keeps coming along every once in a while, but it never quite does as well as people think it will do.
Right, or in the comic world, how many Transformers books do you see them try out, or G.I. Joe?
How many number ones has Moon Knight had?
Exactly right, yeah, the Marvel Universe. I remember when I worked at the comic shop, they had announced the Moon Knight show, and this old-time comic reader, he's a Wednesday warrior, he would come in, and that news came up, and he's like, are a lot of people buying up Moon Knight now? I'm like, yeah, our back issue bins are getting real light on Moon Knight. And he's like, good, now people can see what a shitty character he is. And I'm like, whoa, really? I didn't know that. Like, I've never read a Moon Knight thing because I'm like everyone else where I'm unfamiliar with the character. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't know that shit. But
Moon Knight they should never try doing a full series with that character. They should just have someone come in, do a limited series. Okay, and that's that complete story. Just move on. It's Mean Girls, like stop trying to make fetch happen. Like Moon Knight is okay. He's not great.
Some characters are better left as supporting characters, or as you mentioned, the miniseries. Stephanie Brown, the Poison Ivy fans are constantly on there, like, give them their ongoing. And me, as someone who's seen this for years, I'm like, you're not big enough to and we'd be lucky if a quarter of you would go out and buy those comics. That's the other problem.
Right.
We did get a major delay this week as Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League by Rocksteady Studios has been pushed until next year. According to Bloomberg, Warner Brothers made this move due to the number of games already set for this year. As of today, WB Games has 3 releases with LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, Hogwarts Legacy, and Gotham Knights. This was predicted by Maceo, I want to say about a month and a half ago. It was either between Gotham Knights or Suicide Squad that he was saying they're probably going to push them. And this ended up making gamers a little bit upset because they were really excited to see this, especially after we got gameplay footage a couple weeks back.
Yeah, I mean, I said before, I'm the most casual of gamers. I don't really have a console, but I really like footage we've seen of Kill the Justice League, and Rocksteady puts out awesome DC games. So, like, you know, okay, so everyone's got to wait, a little bit a year. What is time, though? Like, it's been 2 years since the pandemic, basically started. And does it feel like it's been 2 years? Some days it feels like it's been longer. Sometimes it feels like it was last week.
Yeah, exactly right.
So it's like, it'll be 2023 before you know it. And, maybe you'll give them a little bit more time to polish up, maybe add a few more things to it. But like, I'm looking forward to seeing more out of it when it comes out. Just got to wait a little bit longer. I've gotten very patient though in the pandemic.
That's the key right there. I will always rather wait for a better game than get it rushed and have a shitty product in the end.
We know Rocksteady doesn't do garbage, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I lived through the Twilight Princess delays when it went from GameCube to Nintendo Wii, and that shit was like it felt like a 6 to 8 year delay. As when that game finally came out on Kotaku, someone brought in their very old GameStop receipt of their pre-order when they picked it up for the Nintendo GameCube, because it came out on both consoles, and it was like a 6 to 8 year old receipt. That's how many times that fucking game was delayed.
Wow.
Speaking of gaming, we got Halo hitting Paramount Plus, and we got to see the full trailer.
Hello, Master Chief. I'm Cortana.
This series is set to debut on March 24th.
I'm excited. It definitely does not look like the budget that's being given to it that I would want, but at the same time, it's like, I'm just happy to be getting something. I think they're doing what they can. And Master Chief looks cool. I thought someone pointed out, like, apparently the future includes a 2001 Chevy Tahoe. They've been trying to do like a Halo movie series for a long time. Like, that didn't get off the ground. I know Neil Blomkamp, who did like District 10 and Chappie, he wanted to do a Halo movie. I think he just got into doing like a few Halo shorts. And the shorts were cool. And I know there was I think it might have been like a short form YouTube series that the guy in the armor was the actor who played Colossus in the X-Men movies. But this looks like they've got a long form story in mind, and I'm about it. I'm glad my fiance's friend gave us her Paramount Plus login.
Beautiful, man. That's awesome. I'm going to have to ask you when it comes out, what'd you think of it? Because I don't have Paramount Plus. I might get it when the whole series drops. Might do one of those sub for a month and then drop out. Or if they release this on Blu-ray, I know they have been doing that for the Star Trek series like Picard. Then I'll just pick it up on 4K or Blu-ray, because this does look great. The suit looks amazing. You can't improve on how good that suit looks, not only when they have these close-ups of him moving the helmet around, but in those action shots where he's fighting. It doesn't look overly CGI'd like you do see in some of these bigger budget superhero movies.
It looks earthy.
Yeah, it looks like someone is actually in the suit doing these motions, and I don't know how they did it. I don't know how the production went, but it really looks like a legitimately well thought out and put together idea. The story is going to be my biggest concern right now, because I don't know if it's going to fully focus on Master Chief or if there's going to be a bunch of supporting characters and Master Chief will kind of just be in the background. One of the things I did hear on Discord is that they were a little disappointed that the original voice actor from the games of Master Chief isn't voicing the character here, but it's speculated that it's probably going to be because we're going to see him unmasked at some point, and they need an actor behind that helmet.
Yeah, I would imagine that you're going to see some kind of unmasking at some point. Like you have the other Spartans that are unmasked, but it's going to be like a Mandalorian thing where like it'll happen, but it's going to happen sparingly and for maximum impact.
And I know in the games, I don't think they show his face, and that might be a big deal if they do. I don't know. I know in the books they do describe what Master Chief looks like, so they might go that route on it instead.
I think the closest they ever got was like you kind of like see his head in silhouette, like kind of like how they did Carl Urban's Dredd in that movie, where you did see like a silhouette of his head in like the opening, but that was about it. So like his head should be helmeted most of the time, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see a face every now and then.
We've got some positive news on the comic side as TKO Studios has reached a distribution deal with Simon & Schuster. So basically this means comic shops with an account with Simon & Schuster can now order TKA books along with their other trade paperback reorders. They recently earned a 2020 Eisner Award nomination for Sentient, and they were also nominated for Publisher of the Year by Tripwire Magazine. The reason I included this is you were just talking about the pandemic. When Diamond shut down and there were no new books coming out, TKO Studios came forward and did this initiative of order our trade paperbacks, because they don't do single issues. They do only original graphic novels. Order our graphic novels. They were at a discounted rate, and they said that it was something like 50% of the proceeds were going out to comic shops, or they were matching 50% of your order, and they would then send you that money. It was a big initiative that I was like, this is bigger than any of the fucking publishers and what they're doing. And they were like one of the first publishers to come out in support for comic shops. I remember pushing them really hard for the trade paperbacks and the orders, and online I was really, hailing them as like, this is great. More publishers should be doing this. And there was some help out there, like the Bing Foundation. They did some great stuff for employees of bookstores. But I wanted to see more on the level of TKO, and just that little bit of help that they provided for comic shops. People like me remember that shit, and I will then include it in news like here today, or when I go to the comic shop, whatever their latest graphic novel is, I'm going to give it a deeper look because I'm always going to have that positive connection with the company.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with TKO before reading up on this, and I've been looking through creators, and I think I'm going to have to make myself more familiar with them. I mean, they've got Garth Ennis doing work for them, Jeff Lemire, Steve Epting, Ming Doyle. They've got a stacked roster of like well-respected writers, artists, the whole gamut. So I'm gonna have to pick up a book or two and start becoming familiar with them.
On top of the awards that they've been nominated for, again, they are a solid publisher behind the scenes. So next time you head over to your comic shop, make sure to check out one of their graphic novels, or when you go to tkostudios.com. Jason Momoa is now in talks to join Fast and Furious 10, according to The Hollywood Reporter. So previously, Vin Diesel was trying to get The Rock to get on this final movie, and that failed. The Rock basically embarrassed him online and talked about how the behavior that Vin Diesel was implementing to try to convince The Rock wasn't appropriate, and I agree with him. The franchise has passed $6 billion at the box office when it's all said and done, and I think they took a little bit of that budget that would have gone towards The Rock and instead are passing it on over to Jason Momoa.
Momoa doesn't need this. I don't want him to be in this.
Really?
I'm not a fan of the. I kind of checked out on the Fast series.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's 8 might have been the last one I saw in the theater, and that was simply because like I got like a free ticket for it or something like that. And then I mean, eventually kind of like check them out when I'm just in for look for some movie. But it's like it's cheesy. It's like I get the appeal to some people about it, but like I just want this series to end. Like I just want it to be over with.
As long as they keep making, but supposedly number 10 is the last one. But if
I thought they were stretching it to an 11.
I hope they do.
So I think they were supposed to be doing like 10 and 11 like back to back.
That'd be great. I know there was that rumor of like the Jurassic World crossover. It was more of a joke, but I'm like, why don't we fucking do that too? Where you got transport dinos?
They went into space in the last one, so why not?
Fuck yeah. I'm curious as to what they're going to now implement in this movie, because you got space, you got swinging from bridges with cars where you catch it with the wheel. They gotta traverse time now or something, or they gotta go deep underwater.
They brought in superhumans with Idris Elba in that spin-off movie, so it's you either love or you hate it. I'm just tired of it.
Momoa is rumored to play a villain, which I think is pretty interesting. I don't think I've ever seen him as a villain in any of his roles, and not something he's known for. But if it's anything like the other Fast and Furious movies, even just the last one, you'll know that he's going to become family by the end. He's going to switch sides. They never really stay bad. He's going to be at that barbecue by the time you get to the end of the fucking movie.
He'll flip out the chair. He'll do the meme.
Yes, I hope so. Director Roland Emmerich recently had an interview with The Hollywood Reporter about the now released Moonfall film. Have you heard about Moonfall?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone out there, in case you haven't heard, the moon is falling to the earth, and it's the same director of Independence Day. So I got my tickets. I'm going to see that shit. But he spoke about how he wasn't very willing to sign up for 1998's Godzilla. I thought this was interesting. He said, quote, "I didn't want to do Godzilla, but they made me a deal which was unheard of. I said, okay, let's go about this really radically. I'm not doing Big Belly Godzilla. I'm doing him as a lizard. That was supposed to tell everybody I can't do this movie. Godzilla owner Toho said, oh, we'll call this the new Godzilla, the Hollywood Godzilla. Then we can still do our fat Godzilla. And I said, shit," end quote. Well, I have fond memories of that old Godzilla after having seen it now. Like when I was a kid, I believe I got it for Christmas on VHS. I had asked for it for Christmas, and I watched it a few times. My brother always cried when they shot him with missiles and killed him. And now when we replayed it at the comic shop, and we're like, there's some pretty good fucking lines in here. Like, sure, it's cheesy, but it's just like Independence Day with less of the talent.
I remember being so excited for that Godzilla movie. I remember the promos, like the posters, like Godzilla's eye is this big or he's this tall, like plastered on buildings and stuff like that. And I was so looking forward to it. Like I was hyped up at work for it. And I saw that movie. I'm like, when's Godzilla going to show up? I'm like, cause like, this isn't Godzilla. This is something they're calling Godzilla, but like, there's no atomic breath. They like, okay, maybe like one of the surviving egg at the end was, they could have grown into fat belly Godzilla, but I mean, props him for like doing something radically different, but at the same time, like no one was going to see that movie for a radically different Godzilla. They wanted fat belly Godzilla when they saw like something that was like hybrid between, a lizard and, like a rejected alien design. I think it was just not what anyone expected or wanted. I like Matthew Broderick in there. He was kind of cheesy. Jean Reno trying to do an Elvis accent was pretty funny. Like there's some cheesy gold to pull out of there, but at the end of the day, like it wasn't Godzilla, and that's what I pull back. Pull out of that. Like it wasn't what I wanted, but it's about what I expected from Roland Emmerich.
Patrick Chotopoulos, I don't know if you know, but he designed this version of Godzilla. If anyone's unfamiliar with him, he also worked on BVS and on, I believe he also worked on Zack Snyder's Justice League as well as Man of Steel. So he's very well known in the Hollywood creature design, monster designs. He was in that Face Off show, which is amazing. He was on there until he had to work on BVS, and then he stepped off for a season. So it's just neat that I got to see like his original design for that Godzilla. And yeah, I mean, it's basically what you see on the big screen, a little less dinosaur-like because Jurassic Park had been huge around that time. So I think they had shifted it a little bit to look more like a T-Rex rather than a straight lizard type of creature. But it's just kind of neat how some of these people that you enjoyed their designs today had worked on some of the movies that weren't received as well.
Yeah, I liked his concept art, and he's a great designer. But it's like, I'm sure he was kind of in a rough spot where Emmerich is giving him this direction of we're not doing fat belly Godzilla. This is what I want. I want something more lizard-like, and he's probably a fan of original Man in Suit Godzilla, and like, okay, well, how do I make a Godzilla without it being Godzilla? So I think he did the best he could with what Emmerich was giving him. He's done plenty of great iconic designs outside of that.
Absolutely. And it wouldn't be a modern director interview if the MCU didn't come up in some way, shape, or form, or superheroes.
Prerequisite.
When asked if the disaster genre had changed in recent years, Roland responded with, quote, "Oh yes, because naturally Marvel and DC Comics and Star Wars have pretty much taken over. It's ruining our industry a little bit because nobody does anything original anymore," end quote.
Says the man who directed how many disaster movies?
Well, and people were bringing up some of the IP movies that he'd done in the past and some of his original ones too, like Independence Day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I disagree. I will disagree with him because there are plenty of movies that have come out in the last couple of years, even since the MCU started or the superhero genre really blew up, that are not blockbusters, but you can find original movies. Nightmare Alley just came out a couple months ago. It flopped at the box office, but there is an original idea right there that he can say that tentpole films are the box office now, and if that's what he meant by what he said, which I don't think it was, then I would agree with him. And it seems like people are mainly coming out to theaters just to see the giant blockbusters, the ones that already have a giant name attached to it, like Spider-Man, like, well, I can't name anything DC currently because they've all been flopping as well, but anything like the Avengers and whatnot, people will come out for. Guardians 3, I'm sure people will be there. But the smaller independent movies, even if they're backed by a studio that's not Disney or Warner, they seem to not be doing as well in the box office, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the pandemic's made people really selective about what they're willing to come out for. And, it's weird. It's like, okay, they want social distancing, but the thing that's bringing people out is the stuff that, okay, you're definitely going to be in a crowded theater for. And that's fine. Like I've become kind of crowd averse, and the stuff that I've been coming out for has mostly been like the blockbuster stuff, because I like these smaller movies that may not have, or may not have gotten played well in the theater. I like a more intimate setting to see them. Like they're more contemplative, or you can kind of back up, slow down a little bit, and pay more attention, revisit it later. And I feel like I've heard this complaint from directors for like the last 20 years. It's not just like it's a recent thing. People have been complaining about how like big blockbuster movies have been like destroying theaters for like over half my life. But what it's done is what has happened in the last decade is that with the rise of these streaming services, some of these things that might have been a movie that didn't perform well are now getting to become like a series or something or like a direct to streaming movie that has a higher production value than it might have gotten if it was in a theater. Got a little bit more stories. I think there's great storytelling out there. It's just not strictly in a movie theater now.
There's definitely some positives to having that option of Netflix coming in and saving a series or churning it into a Netflix original or HBO Max, whatever it may be, whereas it might have never gotten made if we were still in the 90s, for example, where it was just movie studios only coming out in theaters or direct to VHS. He has spoken in the past about his thoughts towards superhero movies, particularly the MCU ones. So none of this is, as far as his thoughts on the genre, is new. He once said that he watches MCU movies to fall asleep while he's on the plane. So I'm guessing it was either Doctor Strange or Black Panther, because those are the ones that came to mind. As far as, I didn't finish them, but I found them so boring I couldn't finish them. Mm-hmm. But I can see some of that being true, especially, and people that freaked out on Twitter on him. I'm like, the guy made Independence Day. Like, let him say what he wants. I'll watch Independence Day over anything in the MCU any fucking day of the week. I mean, that fucking movie is amazing. That's timeless. Just on the speech alone from Pullman.
Yeah.
And Moonfall, again, is in theaters right now. So in case you want to see a disaster movie, I will probably let you know next week how I enjoyed it. I do have some thoughts on the cast, because it doesn't seem like there's that charm that we used to get from some of these disaster movies. But you know what? You got Halle Berry in there, so let's go. I'll check it out. Yesterday, Ezra Miller kind of excited the Restore the Snyderverse fan base quite a bit. He put up an Instagram story criticizing the Variety story of The Flash being Ben Affleck's final time playing Batman. He specifically highlighted a portion of the story denoting that the film would be his, quote, one last time, quote, as the character. So Ezra added ha 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 in large red font and underlined the portion of the one article that says one last time. And the last time Ben spoke about playing Batman again, he said that Zack Snyder's Justice League and The Flash were, quote, a really nice finish on my experience with that character, end quote. So how do you interpret that message that Ezra put out there? Because there's either the one way of he's making fun of Ben for that's his last time, which I don't think that's the case, or that he's laughing at Variety for saying that The Flash is going to be his last appearance and maybe he knows something that everyone else doesn't. There is a rumor from a couple of sources on Twitter that put it out there and that I've spoken to that Warner Brothers is apparently not happy with Ezra putting up this Instagram story.
I don't feel like he's making fun of Ben. Anytime I've seen Ezra do anything, like he's kind of a weird dude, but he also doesn't come across as someone who just makes fun of people for no reason. I think he's making fun of Variety and I think he knows something that wasn't there. I mean, like a couple of teases on Snyder's Vero that make it seem like he's up to something. I mean, maybe there's a project that he's involved with, or he's working behind the scenes with Snyder on something. It would be great to see him put on the suit again. I feel like there's something going on there. Like Ezra knows something that we don't, or definitely that Variety doesn't, or he believes that there are conditions under which Ben would return as Batman, and I think those conditions are basically letting Zack Snyder finish his Justice League series.
What I don't like about anytime something like this happens is on both sides of, like, there's the DC fans that are enjoying the current DC movies and shows, and then there's the detractors too that are like, leave Ben alone, he's done with the character, and we're all like, the only person that can decide that is Ben. Like, we can campaign, like us campaigning and pushing for him to be Batman isn't forcing him to do anything. I think if he's truly done with the character, he won't do Justice League 2 or 3, and that's that. But us campaigning and asking him or whatever, I don't think there's any harm in it. And obviously, as you mentioned, there's stuff happening behind the scenes, and I wouldn't be shocked if there's already been an inked contract to him appearing in future movies past The Flash. There's just too many hints, like you said.
Maybe he's also kind of laughing because, well, we've thought Ben was done with Batman like multiple times before. I know we thought he was done after Justice League, and then he shows up. He does a tag for Zach for that, and then he shows up in The Flash, that's coming out. So like, I feel like there's conditions that he'll don the suit again, and it's when he's working with people that he trusts are doing right by his vision of Batman.
That was one of the things that Zach said when he called him, hey, can you do this extra filming for the nightmare sequence and that last scene with what should have been Green Lantern, but instead it was Martian Manhunter. And Ben's words were, yeah, Zach, for you, anything. So that their relationship is amazing, where if he were to call him up and say Justice League 2 and 3, I feel like Ben would be like, all right, when do we start?
Yeah.
And speaking of which, during an AEW wrestling event, friend of the show, he's been on before, and friend of mine as well, Lord Koji, held up a Restore the Snyderverse sign. Koji years ago held up a Release the Snyder Cut sign at a wrestling event as well, where it also got picked up by the media. There were some articles on comicbook.com. It was all over Twitter of people saying they're even in the wrestling events, these Restore the Snyderverse people. And I'm like, yeah, that's Lord Koji. He did it last time too. So positive press for the movement, and I don't think anyone had a real big issue with it. It was more like, holy shit, they're even in the wrestling scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to give a little shout out to Lord Koji for that one. And if you follow his Instagram, you will see his progress photos when he made the sign, when he was actually at the event, and he's been on the show before again. So make sure to check him out. He's also on our Discord. There'll be a little tag that goes up about of whenever he goes live on YouTube and when he puts up some videos, so you can check it out there.
Keep the fight alive.
Got to keep going. In an interview with the New York Times, ex-Disney boss Bob Iger was asked if the pandemic marks the death of movie theaters. So kind of going off of what Roland had spoken about earlier. He said, quote, "I don't think it's the death. I think it's a severe injury that maybe doesn't heal. And what I mean by that is not fatal. It may be fatal to some. I think that people will still want to go to the movies. However, they will be much more, I think, discerning about what movies they want to see out of the home, where you're likely to say or ask yourself, wait a minute, is this a movie I need to see on the big screen and do all that? Or can I wait or not even wait for that matter and see it at home?" End quote. I think that pretty much reflects what you were saying earlier, right, Matt?
Exactly. Like I've become a lot more discerning about what I want to go out and see. You know, like movies have gotten like, for me, when I do go out to a movie, it's like an event now. Like I want to my fiance and I are we're gonna go out to dinner. We're gonna go watch a movie. It's like it's become a date night thing and not just like something I want to do because this movie's out that like I really want to see. Like now with like assigned seating in a lot of theaters, you don't have to worry about being there on time. Some of the excitement of like waiting in line with a bunch of people, like I kind of miss that, but at the same time I don't, because it's something that just happens when you get older. Like you don't want to be in long sweaty lines at past midnight. And I'm nostalgic for those days, but I don't miss them. So when I go out, it's an event. If I don't want to go out, I know it's going to come out fairly soon on streaming, and we'll have like a more intimate date night at home, where we'll just set up the laptop or on the porch and have dinner out on the porch while we're watching something.
I think Kelly and I might be, and we've been saying throughout this whole pandemic that we might be outliers to the movie theater experience, because we'll still go and see. I went to see Nightmare Alley a month ago, and that one again it flopped. So people didn't come out to see it, but I need to see certain movies. Most movies I would love to see on the big screen. If I have the time to catch what I know, like, it's Guillermo's latest movie, I'm there. It's Snyder's latest movie, I'm there. There's certain directors and actors that I will follow, and whenever possible, Ridley Scott in the Gaga or Gucci movie starring Lady Gaga, I went out to the big screen and I watched it on there. So but I think we're definitely, Kelly and I are in the minority when it comes to that. But that being said, I will still go out and see him. And Guillermo Del Toro, he recently also had his own take on why his movie Nightmare Alley bombed at the box office. It's considered one of the best movies of last year, and it will probably get nominated for an Academy Award. But he reflected on the state of filmmaking, saying, quote, "Every decade or two, the audience changes. In the 70s, the audience was mostly composed of adults, and then it became a lot younger in the 80s. That audience matures and changes, but right now is probably the most difficult moment in history to make a film for adults. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be that way. Nothing is permanent," end quote. This was in an interview with NME. This is the first time I've seen a take like this on why certain films aren't being flocked to in the movie theaters. Do you kind of understand what he's referring to here? Is he kind of saying that it's a generational thing as far as filmmaking?
Things as far as like blockbuster filmmaking, we all know like that changed when Star Wars came out. Like that, that was like a watershed moment, and that led to a lot of the 80s. You saw like a lot of derivatives of that, sci-fi movies and series that either did well or didn't do well. And the 80s were a lot of like throwing whatever they could against the wall to see what stuck. And like you go back and watch like a selection of movies from the 80s. You can see the hard drugs that were in the air on a lot of those movies. And then like the 90s, I felt like there was definitely a shift. There was a lot more CGI. There was a lot less practical things, but you started seeing like every decade has a flavor. So when he says it, like I know what he's talking about. It might be a little hard to define, but like right now we're in the superhero decade, and like, even though it's been going on like 20 years, it's really, I would say that it's like the Marvel decade. As much as I've liked a lot of most of the DC movies, or just like with the comic books, you had the Golden Age, the Silver Age, and you did have a Marvel Age. Like right now, we're in the Marvel Age of movies, and like in another 10 years, it'll be something else. And by the end of the 2020s, there'll be some other flavor, but maybe Marvel will still be able to keep a foothold, but there'll be something else.
Now that you kind of put it into perspective as far as the 70s and Star Wars, like that's true. Like it did change cinema forever.
Like no one had merchandising like previous to that, or since. Like no one's given those rights, but it's like marketing and merchandise like became like the driver of so much media.
I am glad too that Guillermo didn't immediately blame certain, like you said, the Marvel movies or the superhero age. And I think it's because he's been involved in comic book movies like Hellboy.
Mm-hmm.
He was attached to Justice League Dark, and he
Blade
loves
too.
that genre. Blade. Exactly right. So I don't think he would be the kind to blame superhero movies anyway, but it's just a different take that he's a smart guy. He knows a lot about filmmaking. So I'm like, all right, that was way different than anything I would have considered, because I definitely don't know what the answer is for any of these, but him kind of taking this broader picture of, it comes and goes in waves, and it also depends on what's going to change the landscape. Like you mentioned, Star Wars, or to a certain extent, The Matrix. So a lot of these things are also to be considered, and I'm glad he brought that up. But that does wrap up the bulk of news for the episode. We do have this month's What's New on HBO Max, the February 2022 highlights. So this is a list that I put together based on stuff that I've seen or things that I feel like Matt and I can reflect on. And the first one on this list, I loved it. I saw it at AMC when I used to work there, is 3:10 to Yuma. Came out in 2007. It is a remake. One of the films you can point to and say the remake is better than the original. So have you seen this one starring Christian Bale?
Yeah, I liked it. That was James Mangold, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and he directed Logan.
That's right.
So like he's another guy. He doesn't direct crap. So like I enjoyed Christian Bale chasing down Russell Crowe, and it was the kind of Western you see every once in a while. They're like, wow, I love more of those, but then it's kind of more special that they're not that frequent.
That's true, with the Western being something that used to be huge, and now Logan, that can be considered, I think it is a Western. I would consider it a Western. Yeah. And that was another one that did extremely well. It was R-rated. They came out with the black and white version as like a special edition on limited run, I think, in theaters, and then it came out on Blu-ray. But yeah, you're right. You can pull out a Western every now and again, and it will catch people's attention.
Mm-hmm.
One that I remember seeing a lot of t-shirts for when I was in high school and people recommending, and I finally checked it out myself. And I did enjoy it, but Donnie Darko is also hitting HBO Max, and I kind of want to give it a rewatch. But I remember this being a movie where everyone had like a theory as to like what happens at the end and what the characters were really going through. Have you seen Donnie Darko?
I want to say yes, but I feel like I've also seen maybe parts of it, but I don't think I've watched it straight through from beginning to end. But that could also be like, because it's kind of a non-linear movie, that I could just be remembering it out of order.
Yeah, I can't say there's any really memorable scenes in there, like the movie theater scene, sure, and then the ending, but it's not one that I can tell you exactly like, oh yeah, so that scene followed this one, and in the middle of the movie this happened. It's a very tough film to really remember, digest. I might give it another watch, but I also don't remember being super blown away by it. It has a lot of time travel elements in there, which is kind of neat. Then it all ties in together when you get to the end to where everything else makes sense as you rewatch it from beginning to end. But I would say it's worth a shot if you've never seen it before. And the second Kick-Ass is also hitting HBO Max. I haven't seen either one, but would this be something you'd recommend? Have you seen either one?
Kick-Ass one was awesome. It was fantastic. The second one I kind of saw where they were going with it. They were trying to play on the actual, for what used to be there was like a legit real life superhero movement. Like there was like clubs in Seattle that were like people who would dress up and patrol the street or do charity drives. And it was kind of like doing a more heightened version of that. It was really, the second one was really more of a hit girl movie than it was Kick-Ass, but I love the first one. Nicolas Cage does a crazy bonkers, like kind of a murderous Adam West Batman kind of with Big Daddy. I definitely think you should 100% check out the ridiculousness of the first Kick-Ass. Second one, if you set your expectations a little bit lower, I think you'll enjoy that one too.
I remember the first one when it came out, people wouldn't shut up about Hit Girl, and I'm assuming that's probably why they made her more important in the second one, or it was either when the second one came out that she was a big deal.
She was a bigger deal in that one. I think what didn't resonate as much with me in Hit Girl the second one. In the first one, it's okay. You've got Chloe Grace Moretz, who is like basically 10 years old, who was just like cutting guys to ribbons, and it's freaking hilarious because it gets really graphic. Like she's like lopping off people's limbs and shooting them in the head, and it is like she steals the movie. But in the second movie, she goes basically from 11 to what's supposed to be like like the next year or the next couple of years. It seems like now she's all of a sudden like somehow like much closer in age to the lead character. And it just gets kind of weird. They kind of do like some Mean Girl stuff where some girls pick on her and she gets revenge on them, and there's like a weird like romantic subplot between her and Kick-Ass, and it just feels weird if you watch it like right after the first one, when it's like they're supposed to be much further apart in age. Like he was supposed to be like later in high school, and she's basically like 11, 12 years old. Now all of a sudden she's like in high school as well. So it gets a little weird.
I'll have to track down Kick-Ass 1, and if you recommend it that highly, I might just pick it up on Vudu. I know it used to be on Netflix, but I just haven't been able to spot it again on any streaming service. Another comic series too that for some reason maybe it did well back when it released, but every time they tried to do Kick-Ass 2 in the comics, and I think they went up to 3, and it just doesn't do well anymore. And that's one that I was like, yeah, I cut down to like subs only at one point of like, no one's picking this up off the shelves. No one cares. The last really good Tim Burton film that I enjoyed was Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. It also has the great Alan Rickman in it. And I got to say, this is probably the last really good Burton film. And I think his best days are probably behind him. And if he surprises me with something amazing later on, great. But this was the one that I was after this, and he started making other films. I was like, I think I'm kind of done with Tim.
I have not seen all of it. My fiance loves it, and so I'm sure at some point we'll sit down and watch it straight through. It's one of those things that she kind of puts on when she's doing stuff around the house. It's kind of like background, so that's where I'll catch like snippets here and there. But one of these days, I'd like to. Like, it's been a long time since I've seen like a great Tim Burton movie. Like I miss Tim Burton.
Yeah. Are you a big Harry Potter guy?
I've enjoyed them.
Okay, I was going to say, because this has 3 cast members that are pretty prominent in those series in Demon Barber. So Alan Rickman, Helena Bonham Carter, and then the same actor that played Ron's rat in the films, and he also was Dumbledore's. Yes, Peter Pettigrew. That's right. So he's in there too, and I'm like, every time I see some of these old movies or it has like a large English cast, I'm always like, there's a ton of Harry Potter actors in here. It's kind of like they use the same ones.
Well, I mean, the Harry Potter movies, I think they used probably 3/4 of available British actors.
Yeah, that's true. Also hitting HBO Max is Nightmare Alley, which we were just talking about. So it's the latest Guillermo movie. I've got to say, while I did go see it in theaters, I'm not going to be rewatching this on HBO Max, and it's not one I plan on ever seeing again. It wasn't a bad movie, but once I got maybe a quarter of the way through the movie, and I don't know if it's just because the plot was, I don't know if I've seen something like it before, but I'm like, okay, I know where this character is going to end up by the end of the movie. And sometimes when I'm able to figure out those plot points, it's like, great. And the journey there is amazing. And I love to see it unfold. It's kind of like when you rewatch a movie. But in this case, it was just kind of like, all right, well, I know where this character is going to end up and how things are going to work out or fall apart for them. and it just wasn't as neat to see the first time. And the visuals are amazing. I'm sure there's going to be some cinematography or directing accolades that come out of it. But to me, the story itself was probably the weakest portion of it. If you like Guillermo, sure, check it out on HBO Max. But I would not say it's probably one of my least favorite of his movies, which is unfortunate because this is a pretty original story. But
they can't all be bangers.
Exactly. And that being said, it's not a terrible movie either. So I don't know if he's ever made a really bad film. The Looney Tunes Valentine's Day Extravaganza. It's an HBO Max original, and that one is also hitting HBO Max. I don't know if you've seen these, but they are awesome. They're just like the old classic Looney Tunes, right down to the yellow gloves on Bugs.
So check it out. Like, I have not seen them. The only thing that I remember about them is just like, conservative news outlets like being up in arms because this is all they can get up in arms about is like when something in their childhood from 100 years ago has changed, and like they were talking about how like Elmer Fudd doesn't have a gun and whatever, and like, oh, Yosemite Sam doesn't have guns, like, and when was the last time any of these people like watched a Looney Tunes cartoon? Like probably 50 years ago. I will check them out at some point. Like I love Looney Tunes, and I love that they constantly reinvent them. Like if it's not for me, I just wait for the next iteration.
Yeah, and that all being said, though, I remember that being a news thing when it came out, and when I watched that first season of this original series, none of that came to mind. I didn't go, oh shit, he doesn't have his guns. The humor, the writing, the hand-drawn animation, which is a big deal to me, especially in this world of everything is computerized. They could have easily gone that route, and I think they have in the past. But in this iteration of it, they were literally going, this cartoon is for people, adults that grew up on the old stuff. That doesn't mean that they're dropping F-bombs or, it's like the Harley Quinn show or anything like that. It's still classic. It's still regular Looney Tunes. Leo was watching some of it with me, but the humor itself, there's violence in it. There's explosions. They are not that careful where they're like, well, we got to make sure we don't make it too violent. They know kids are not going to be the majority audience on this one. They know it's going to be people like you or I who are familiar with the old stuff that are going to go see this. With this new special, I don't know if they reverted that bit with the guns. I'm not too sure. But as far as like trying to modernize it, that's probably the only thing that they've done, unless I haven't picked up on anything else, but everything else seems like it's exactly the same. It's very clean. I really like the Looney Tunes stuff, and I'm glad that they're still moving forward with specials and original content as well.
Awesome. I'll have to check it out then.
Season 2 of Raised by Wolves. This was the Ridley Scott show. He directed the first episode of the first season, but we're getting season 2. It got renewed. I remember watching that when the service first came out. And it's pretty interesting. It's good stuff. I'm in for season 2. The mullets are back because of this show. So it's kind of interesting how you get a futuristic drama, sci-fi drama, and you get people in the future on that planet with mullets. And it's really fascinating. I enjoyed it. It's good stuff. I don't know if you've seen season 1, but if you're into the Ridley Scott films, I would say this is a show right up your alley.
I have not seen season 1 yet. Like, we talked about like how much content there is just everywhere. And it's like one of those that's on my list of, I want to watch this. And then I saw a trailer and I'm like, what is this? And then like, it's Raised by Wolves season 2. And I'm like, oh my God, I still haven't seen that, but I want to. Like, it looks awesome.
And I'm going to bundle these last couple together because it all kind of goes with the same audience. I'm going to add another one too. Is Rick and Morty season 5, South Park season 25. That one's actually premiering now as of when we're recording. And Robot Chicken season 11 are all also hitting HBO Max. So basically what you find on Cartoon Network and on Comedy Central, those were... I'm glad they're doing new Robot Chickens because I thought they were honestly done with the show.
Love me some Robot Chicken.
Rick and Morty's not one that I ever latched onto. People wouldn't shut up about the Pickled Rick episode. And we sold the shit out of the pops that they came out with. People bought those things up and we ordered so high on them. And they're like, oh, Pickled Rick. And all the kids liked Pickled Rick and they asked for comics featuring the character. And that's the episode I saw. And I'm like, yeah, I don't get it. The show's not for me, I guess. Especially with the Szechuan sauce stuff that all the fans like rated McDonald's for or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, the fan base kind of sucks too, but it all kind of turned me off on it.
Well, I never really latched onto it either. I've got plenty of friends who have, but like I've never wanted to. I felt like it was one of those things that it was very much of the moment, and I feel like by the time I watched any of it, like it was already like the fourth season was like coming out, and I'm like, I don't feel like I'm missing anything. As you said, like the thing that people keep coming back to are either the gif of like, you son of a bitch, I'm in, or the pickled Rick.
Right. And how about South Park? Have you kept up with any of that?
Not at all. Like I've been watching, like whenever they have one of these pandemic specials coming out, like we watch those. But even like the most recent one that they did, we got like partway in and it got something else came up, and we got, I think maybe like 10-15 minutes in, and we haven't gotten back to it yet. But I like the specials. As far as like keeping up with the regular series, I probably haven't like watched South Park as like a regular, like week to week, and probably I don't know, it's like it's coming up on season 25, probably not since season 10.
Wow. Yeah. One of the big format changes they've done, because they crank them out so quick, they can do them, I think, in a day is what it was. They can see like a news story and make an episode out of it. So because of that, and it's still great. I love the show. I'm keeping up with it, but they'll do this whole season story where the whole season, there'll be one arc that wraps up by the end, but each episode will be extremely current events, like things that I believe date the episode by next week, even. Like, it's like, oh yeah, that was that thing they were talking about for that one day or that 1 week. It's not that older content like you were saying in season 10, where it was more about them going to Iraq with Jesus or to save Jesus, and they're going with Santa Claus. Shit like that is, yeah, sure, it's still current event, but it's bigger than like, oh, this happened in that week, and that was a thing on Twitter for a day, and they'll make a whole episode out of it. That's like my only problem right now with it. But it's still funny. It's still great. It's still extremely intelligent the way it's written. I just worry that in 10 years, those episodes are not going to age well.
Yeah, I remember it was a big deal back in the early days of like that before, they went to computer-based animation. Yeah, it was all when it was still all cut paper, that they were like cranking episodes out. Like it'd take them like 6 weeks to crank out an episode, and that, which was extremely fast, for a half-hour animated show to be cranked out that quickly. But now with, I don't know how long they've been using primarily computer animation or computer to get the same effect. But I mean, I would imagine if they're still employing enough people and they still got that ability to comment on current events, like I would imagine it would not take them very long at all to crank out an episode.
And it does look like this season 25 is going to be the last one on HBO Max. Paramount Plus just signed a $900 million deal with the creators of South Park.
Jesus.
And that's going to be on there till 2027, starting, I believe, later this year or next year. And they got them so many seasons for that deal, and a bunch of, I think they said 7 original movies, probably specials, just like the pandemic ones is what they're referring to. They almost $1 billion for a ton of South Park on Paramount Plus now. So that's unfortunate, but maybe another reason for me to eventually get Paramount Plus if I care about South Park enough by the time that deal takes effect. But until then, season 25, I'll enjoy it. But that does wrap up our What's New on HBO Max as well. Now let's head into the Brokehead block, which is what Matt and I have been doing since you last heard us. So Matt, it's been about a month and a half since you were last on. What's been going on with you?
The holidays have come and gone. Getting ready for, I think I've talked about, like, my fiance and I were doing a little mini wedding for my parents at the end of March, since they can't travel for the big wedding that's going to be January of next year. So we've been doing kind of like preps, and getting ready for that one. We got our officiant lined up for it, and I'm just kind of just trying to figure out what to do with the space at my parents' house. We're going to be going up to Virginia, where they're at, and then just do a little mini moon. I mean, that's basically been the bulk of it. And I hit a milestone age. So, yeah, I kind of hit the middle of middle age, where I'll be 45 in a couple of weeks. But I'm
Yeah, it's gonna be your
celebrating.
birthday soon.
I'm celebrating it tomorrow night. Like I'm not that old. We're doing a Batman theme. So hey, if you happen to be in the Lake Buena Vista area tomorrow and you see a group of people dressed as Batman characters, that's probably my group.
Yeah, I still remember, was it 40 where you did the t-shirt with everyone writing on it?
That was 42.
42, that's right.
Because it was the joke on Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's the perfect number.
That's right.
The answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Yeah, that was a fun time at Player One. That's a little bar here in Orlando, arcade bar, I should say.
Yeah, we're going to be in that plaza, like bar crawling around that plaza, starting with Kitty O'Shea's and then kind of just working our way around.
There you go, man. That's awesome. 45. That's
ancient.
No, well, it's not over the hill yet, and it's not that much further from my age either. So let's not call it ancient. Let's not do that.
It's the middle age. I just say it feels ancient just be in the respect that I'll be the age my dad was at when I graduated high school. So it's weird. It's just weird to be at that age and like with high school memories still being somewhat fresh. Like I know it was a long time ago, but at the same time, like it still doesn't feel that long ago.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah. When I get to 45, if it'll still feel like high school was just, I mean, it still feels that way now. And I'm 33, 10 years go by so quick, man, that that's why I don't view, you being 45 as that being that far away from me.
And like I said, earlier, like, does it feel like it's like we've been in this pandemic for 2 years? Like, some days it feels like it's been longer. Some days it feels like, well, they just shut everything down. Like it felt like last year. Like, no, last year everything was opened back up. We were getting vaccines, last year.
Right. And that doesn't feel like we're seeing an end to this, honestly, anytime soon. So I think by this time next year, it'll still be like, all right, we're still kind of in this, but at least a little more out and about, just like we are now. Hopefully supplies are a little bit more available. We were talking about my car's having trouble turning on. Kelly was looking at car prices and I'm like, fuck, man, this is not the time to buy. This car is just going to have to wait 3 years.
Yeah. Check out Carvana. Like the last time my car now I got from them like a couple of years ago, and it was probably the best car buying experience I've ever had.
I might check them out. I know the prices are insane right now because of the chip manufacturing and the shortage of cars and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of feel like a sucker at the same time. Like I'm definitely buying inflated pricing on these things. So I'm also trying to justify it. Like, well, if I trade it in though, am I getting a much higher value because cars are hard to find? Like that. So that might even out in that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting though. You got a birthday, you got a wedding you're planning out and everything still. So
hopefully
busy.
new job. Hopefully new job.
And new job.
I'm waiting to hear back from, I had an interview for a remote work from home job, which ideally is like where I want to be at, just because, my parents are older. They're having a few, health issues. If I can get a remote job that, I can work from there. If they need me for a few days, I can drive up to Virginia or fly up to visit emergency, and I can work while I'm there without really having to take any time off. Just that process has been interesting because it's I've never done like a video interview, and it wasn't even like I was opposite someone else. It was like there were some pre-recorded prompts, and I had to like record, and you get like 2 shots. Like the second shot, if you screwed up, that was it. And so like that was submitted. I got an email back saying, okay, been selected to move the next step, but like you should hear from our HR department, within 3 business days. And it's now been over a week. So, but I also know that company has been, hiring thousands of new employees, and they've received, over 1,000 more applicants than 1,000 more applicants than jobs they have available. So I feel like their HR department's probably a little overwhelmed at the moment. So it's kind of sweet, slowing things down. But I'm kind of hoping that it'd be nice if by my actual birthday, not the one I'm celebrating tomorrow, if I knew I had something to get me out of retail. I'm done with it.
Oh yeah, I bet. Yeah, I don't think kudos to people that can retire working retail, but that's not me. I can't do it. I don't have that fortitude. It's a tough one. On my end, I just have a couple of things that I completed, which is a big deal for me these days. Kelly and I finished The Witcher Season 2 earlier today. So we got through all of that, and that was a nice experience because we got to see, while I enjoyed the time jumps in Season 1, they got rid of all of that in Season 2, so it was just a linear story for all the characters. I was literally
going to ask you that, because the time jumps were a little hard to follow when you have characters who don't really age normally.
Yeah, and that was the major... They actually put a line in the Season 2 of I'm assuming the writers and creators, making fun of people that couldn't follow it. Like, they put that in there of like a jab at that criticism. Kind of like they were bitter at having to do it for Season 2, just doing a linear story. You know, to me, it's not enough to, as someone who enjoyed that in Season 1, it didn't break me from like, well, fuck Season 2 then. It just meant that their story had to be stronger, because now you're telling a straight story that everyone follows at the same time. You're seeing all these characters juggled between scenes in different places. So my thing is, in Season 2, there were some characters I really didn't give a shit about. So when we spent some time on those scenes, like, okay, now we're going to cut to the mages. I'm like, all right, well, let's get through this scene. I want to get to The Witcher, and I want to get to Vesemir and everyone else. So that's the one thing where at least I still had enough interest in the main character and the main protagonists and the supporting cast over there to where I can get through some of the less interesting portions of the show. I think Season 1 was stronger, but Season 2 wasn't so bad that I'm not going to return for Season 3. I don't know if I'm going to check out that prequel show. Did you see that they announced that? It's called like Old Blood or something.
Well, I have not heard about that. I know there was supposed to be like a Witcher animated movie, or I don't know if it was a movie or a series companion they were supposed to do, that Cavill was doing the voice for in that as well. I mean, I love the first season, you know, despite like sometimes, you know, having not being sure like what timeline we were at or where things connected. They did dovetail nicely together by the end of that first season. I mean, if they're giving us more, like, I still haven't seen the second season, but like, I like the world that they're building there, so I'll be down for more.
That animated movie, if you said there's one with Henry Cavill, that might be in the works. They did come out with one last year that focused on Vesemir, and that one was a prequel to the Witcher show. It could even be its own standalone series, to be honest with you, because it didn't, or movie, because it didn't really deeply tie into that first season. And that was excellent. I really enjoyed that. I do recommend you checking it out. But they did, after Season 2 ends, and you can see the trailer online, it's like far in the past from what I gathered, because all of the cast I did not recognize in that show. And the trailer was like, look at all these people that you don't know, but it's in the Witcher world. And I'm like, why am I supposed to care other than it's in the Witcher world? But I'm like, all right, I'll check out an episode or two, and they better have some great characters in there, because it's tough to pull this off without Henry Cavill, The Witcher, or a younger version of him or anything like that. It's like, here's how the elves. And it's like, all right, well, again, that's the portion I didn't care about in Season 2. So it's going to be a tough sell for me. But for Netflix, it makes sense, because The Witcher is a huge hit, and it did really well Season 1. It's doing incredibly well with Season 2. And the last thing I saw, and I've finally been able to catch up on this, unfortunately, it's on crummy ass Amazon Prime, but they're all up on YouTube. So I watched The Jeffersons, and I don't know why they're not pulled off of YouTube. I don't know if just people don't give a shit enough to like copyright strike it. But this is a show that I'm like, all right, you know, I've been going back and watching older TV shows, things to HBO Max, like Family Matters, some of the stuff I grew up on, some stuff that I still rewatch, like Seinfeld. And The Jeffersons was a show that my aunt, when she visited, she used to live in the US and she moved to Mexico, and then she would visit. She would always watch The Jeffersons on this old TV when she'd come and visit for months at a time, and she'd always be watching that, and I'd catch a little bit of it. So I'd had a little bit of that attachment that I'm like, I want to fucking watch The Jeffersons. And they're all up. Again, you can see a bunch of them on YouTube, and it's a fucking great show. Like, I'm like, I can see why my aunt loved it. Now, I watched it with Kelly, and she didn't like the show as much, because she's like, these characters are all mean to each other. And I'm like, yeah, it's great.
Welcome to 80s sitcoms.
Well, this one I think was early 70s or something. It's kind of like what Maceo and I were talking with Seinfeld and Friends, where he was saying that the difference between those two fan bases, the reason why they're so polar opposite is Friends is a lot, those characters are redeemable or they're more relatable in a way. Whereas Seinfeld, they're all assholes. And it kind of depends on the kind of personality that you have. So for me, like, I relate more to Seinfeld. I'm like, I find that hilarious. And Maceo equated that to him being from New York, me being from Chicago, where it's just like a very northern type of, I don't know, mentality. We're not the nicest people. And the same goes with the Jeffersons, where I thought that shit was hilarious. Like him talking back to his wife or to his neighbors, or like all of that shit was hilarious to me. So
yeah, I think they spun out of All in the Family show. Then they spun off into their own show and like that. So it was definitely like 70s, but I think they were on into like the early 80s.
Yeah, the last season came out in 85, and I think it ran for 9 or 11 seasons. But yeah, it's considered one of the most successful spin-off shows, along with Frasier. It's crazy. Like now, I kind of want to see Family Ties, even though it only has a couple of characters in it. So that's kind of what's been going on with me, revisiting old shows and finishing newer ones.
Were the jobs going well?
Yeah, it's not necessarily what I'm looking to do a decade from now, but the stress level is much lower than running the comic shop. And
that's good, man. That's your mental health's got to come first.
Yeah, and Kelly's noticed a difference as well at home. So ever since I switched over to this other job, it's less hours, which means I'm at home more. So I'm averaging like 30 to 25 hours a week. So that means more time at home with Leo, with Kelly. And that's a positive. That's always huge. At the comic shop, it was definitely over 40 hours every week. And I'm still a regular at the comic shop. I'm still a subscriber there. I still go in and pick up my books every other week or every week. So they update me. They're like, yep, this happened this week, or now that happened this week. And every time I tell them, man, I would have been really pissed this week. Man, that would have driven me nuts.
Yeah, it's kind of like my mental health with work has not been the greatest. So, regardless of whatever happens with this interview, it's like it might be just time to like move out, like or move on, and then I don't know, supplement with like pick up some Instacart gigs or something if I have to, just to get a clean break. Like when I look at like last year, the past year, like it's been one thing after another. I haven't been fully staffed in my department since March of last year. I've been working mid shifts just because there's not enough coverage for a month now, so it feels like I'm like my days are just gone and all the time, and everything that's going on, it's like the working in retail has just gotten harder and harder. It's probably the last couple of years have been the hardest it's ever been, just from interacting with people, and it's something's got to give, and it's got to give before I like snap at someone.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I reached the point where I was snapping at people, and that's when I was kind of like, all right, well, that's a sign this is it. So
yeah.
So that you're right. You're absolutely right. And the fortunate thing with this right now, Matt, is that there's thankfully a lot of opportunity out there.
Yep.
It's not like pre-pandemic where you'd apply at a place and they had the luxury of not right now. But now most places are like, no, we need whatever we can get. And it's a time to really find like that position that you'll be in post all of whatever this is. And then like we said, it's still some time before we're out of any of this, but at the very least, we do have that silver lining of, okay, well, this is a great opportunity to make some changes in our lives, some positive ones, which you're obviously recognizing, and that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you, Matt, especially since you mentioned that it's been a longer day for you, but you made some time and put the effort to be on so that the Brocat Core can enjoy an episode this week. So thank you so much for being on the show and helping me co-host. Again, it's people like you that help the show continue. So I really appreciate it. And I want you to give the Brocat Core a shout out to where they can find you or interact with you.
Again, thank you for having me. It's always fun being on the show, talking about this stuff. We were supposed to be a couple weeks earlier, but I'm glad you were able to find someone to fill in for me at the last minute. So thank you for the fill in on that. And as far as like where they can find me, Instagram at madner.com and Facebook.com/Madner. I may be getting into the TikTok game soon. We'll see. I don't know. It might be it's one of those things that if I can get some on a regular schedule or a little bit more time, that I've got some ideas of some things I want to do that with my 3D printer that I have yet to use.
I was thinking do some TikTok dancing. That's what they do on there, all the kids and whatnot.
No, I've been doing it. So like Steph and I have been doing it like for finding like cool, interesting places to go eat, or new places in Orlando. And I've actually been getting a lot more into like the algorithm on my end has been more. I've gotten to a point where like I'm seeing more creative things come across my feed, like artistic projects, and I'm like, oh, I can do that, or I want to do that. So it's like it's been a nice mix of seeing things that I have done something similar or some things I want to learn. So TikTok's been great for giving me like bite-sized nuggets of like things I want to learn about, which is kind of weird because like Facebook's now just a place you go to just kind of like argue about stuff, and Instagram's where you go to like people are being influencers. Like I still don't understand what that is or how you get to be one, but and then like Snapchat, I don't know. I mean, I literally only have Snapchat for like doofy things that my fiance sends me, and then like I've got a friend who posts just what I can only call heinous pictures of her food, and and that's literally all I use Snapchat for.
Gotcha. Awesome. And there will always, as always, there will be a link to where you can find Matt in the description of today's episode. We do have merch hitting thereasonsimbroke.com. If you pull down on the menu and click on merch, you will find all of our previous designs, some art curated ones from other artists that also show up on TeePublic, and we do get a little cut of that if you pick up a shirt or a mug, a mask. But this month I do have 3 new designs debuting, and normally it's only 1. The reason it's 3 is because it does relate to one another. It'll make sense when you all see it, but that will be coming out this month, probably in the middle of the month. I'll be launching those, and every quarter or so I have a summer design that I'm going to be really putting up on TeePublic as well. But if you want to catch up on some of the older stuff, again, that's at thereasonsimbroke.com. Just click on merch, and that will take you to the link on where you can find everything on there. Perfect time to load up on some of that summer clothing as well, because believe it, it will be here before you know it.
Preach.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you again for being on, and to you on the other side. If you've made it through to the end of the episode, we really do appreciate it. And if it's your very first episode, hopefully you will come back next week for some more. I've been Daniel, joined by Matt and Brokehead Core. All will be well. What's another character that you would consider like Moon Knight that's like, maybe don't give them a series? You can probably come up with 3, I bet.
I mean, Devil Dinosaur.
Yep.
Rom Space Knight.
Oh my God, yes.
Micronauts.
Yeah, they try Micronauts every now and again too. I hate to pick on Dynamite. They're constantly putting out a new Vampirella. Although Vampirella is probably their most popular of what they have. But let's see, what Grim Fairy Tales does okay. Now I'm coming back here. Hellboy, they only do as 2-issue miniseries now. And
Peacemaker. Oh, wait. but okay. But in all fairness, like I know your feelings on James Gunn, but I've actually been enjoying Peacemaker. John Cena's fun to watch.
I'm going to take the Paragon option here and go, I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah. I knew that was going to be your response.